Welcome to the PrimeSpan Podcast, where we talk about aging, mental health, and living well in the years that matters the most. Each week, we cut through the noise to focus on what actually helps you feel clearer, steadier, and more in control as you age. If you're navigating the second half of life or thinking ahead, you're in the right place. Let's get into it.
Many people in our audience spent 30 or 40 years building something. Careers, businesses, families. Work gave them purposes, pride, and stability. But here's a question we rarely stop to ask. What did our work build in our lives? And what did it quietly take from our biology? This episode isn't anti-work. It's about durability. I want to welcome our co-hosts, our special guest today. Raffi, I have a quick question for you. When we invited you for the episode and you heard the topic money versus health, are we working over ourselves sick? What lands for you in this conversation?
Well, it's kind of a tricky question. I mean, we all need work for compensation and income. So it's something obviously we all do, but, health is very, very important also. So, when I think of that, I always think of work-life balance. And, early on in, my career and my life, I learned that it didn't really exist. It was more work than really life. My teenage years, you'd go out, you'd do some fun things, but, I became a business owner at the age of 20. So I jumped right into it. And there really was no balance in the beginning. It was 7 days a week, around the clock. But it also gave me a sense of purpose. It gave me, meaning. And, I truly loved what I did. So, the balance part came later on in life.
I have a follow-up question. When you look back at your most ambitious years, what were you chasing during those times?
I'll be honest. Initially, it was the money, and when you get a taste of making money, you obviously want to make more. You want to be able to parlay it. You want to be able to take it to a higher level. But as it started transitioning, it was more about finding a balance. Work is full of stress. We're all under the gun all day, all trying to, make a living. In the latter stages, it became more about finding purpose and meaning and more family balanced.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And what did that type of work give you that what you're proud of now?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I would say from 20 to 40, I worked a lot. When I started, like I said, first 5 years, it was 7 days a week. Later on in life, it became 6 days a week. And what really changed is when I had my first child at 30. Responsibilities changed. Pecking order in the world changed. I had someone else to feed. So yeah, there were transitions along the way, definitely.
I think I can definitely relate with that, especially being a new dad. I'm going through the same thing.
Yeah.
One question I want to bring Kassandra and Allyson in this question for these questions. Did exhaustion ever feel like proof you were succeeding during those times?
Yeah, that is a tricky question, Adam. So early on, and when I say early on, from 20 to 30, exhaustion really didn't play a role. I think after 30, mental exhaustion kind of took place. So it wasn't really physical, like my body wouldn't get tired, but after a long day worth of work and, dealing with clients and employees and everything else, then yeah, it took its toll. And, sometimes when you're exhausted and you're running and driving through work, you kind of lose your focus. And that's when, those doubtful things start coming into your head, like, am I doing the right thing? Am I headed in the right direction? You start questioning it because fatigue kind of takes over your clear way of thinking. And, again, I think the evolution of, running a business, being a business owner and working for a long time, you change your approach.
I want to ask for everybody here, because you're bringing something very important, and this is very common in our culture. From a behavioral perspective, why do we think that high performers often normalize stress like that?
Again, great question here. High performers have a different way of thinking, and I've thought of that. Sometimes when I feel like I'm doing so much, the following day I feel like I'm not doing enough. So your mind is constantly thinking of, achieving more, getting more done. But the following day you think you're not doing enough. So it's never enough. So you're constantly pushing forward. You're breaking your thresholds. And I think for high level achievers or the select few that understand that, and they're eccentric. I've worked with tons of people that are high level people, and they're all quirky in their own ways. And I myself probably am too. We're set in the way we do things, but ultimately it's about getting it done. Early on, I say this: failure wasn't an option for me. I put my neck on the line. I invested capital, so I could not afford to fail. That was everything. So to think of a high level of achieving, there was no. It was almost like a dogfight where you would fight to die.
That's a very powerful illustration there. Allie, Cass, what are your thoughts so far?
I agree with what Raffi is saying. I feel like if you're not staying busy, if you're not filling up your day, if you're not being productive, then what are you doing? What are you accomplishing, in life? I remember when my own personal phone and then a work phone. And I initially, in my younger years, I felt so cool to be able to have two phones to be checking. And I'm like, checking emails while I'm out and about, or, at dinner, with friends or with family, and checking my phone and checking emails and feeling like, oh, I'm so productive. I'm really great at this. I'm answering, emails, like there's no boundary. But it like that was part of my identity. And I feel like that was part of the service I was providing. And if I wasn't, constantly doing that, or on top of emails or on top of things, and, working late into the evening, then it felt like then I was just being lazy. And I think that's also what kind of society has pumped out, and culture has pumped out for all of us. So, yeah, I think it's also just part, it's part of the identity. Like if you're busy, then you must be doing something right. You must be, successful if you're, busy and filling your days with just being productive, whatever that might look like.
I think as you're talking, I went to the idea of that I chased perfection for a long time. And I think in your early 20s, when you're chasing career and just trying to level up, I wasn't really focused on the long term, just focusing on doing my best, getting my work done, but it's not sustainable. But you only learn that as time goes on and you gain more experience and learning to have balance. I appreciate that you kind of talked about work-life balance and saying it doesn't exist, because everybody talks about that. Oh, you need a work-life balance, but it doesn't exist. And I agree with that statement. You just have to make time for things.
Do you think that there's a part of people that looks at that exhaustion, when you're exhausted and you're in that level, that you also equate your worth into that level? That you feel like, oh, I'm worth that, because you're busy. You feel like you're exhausted because of your busyness, or you're needed. You equate your worth. Do you think people end up being sucked in because of that. They're feeling that they're important because of that too.
I mean, relevance is important in the world. And, sometimes we do work ourselves to exhaustion, regardless if you're working a 9 to 5 or you're running a business. Especially in today's world. I mean, it's tough out there and it's very, very competitive. And, I feel, I grew up in, the 80s and the 90s, and I look at kids getting 4-year degrees these days. And now with the whole AI thing and everything, I mean, the whole world, jobs are going to be harder to find. So yeah, exhaustion plays a big role in it. But again, if you look at the most successful people in the world, you look at, like, we'll use Elon Musk as an example. I mean, Elon took a company, grew it, made millions and millions and millions of dollars. Instead of resting on his laurels, he took everything he made and launched it into something even bigger. And, some would go, hey, you're pushing yourself too far, but that's the way he was wired. He didn't have a boundary. He didn't have a horizon or a cap. He just kept pushing until he felt it was right. And again, he's an eccentric character. We might not be Elon's, but that's what worked for him. So yeah, I mean, some people work themselves to exhaustion. I think the importance in this is, Allyson said this, as you age and more wisdom comes in, you learn to work. Everyone's heard this phrase, you work smarter, not harder. And, I learned early on, I was very hands-on when I started my business. I wanted to do everything. I didn't think other people could do it as good as I could. But I also found that if I had to do everything, then my business wouldn't grow. I couldn't scale it. So I had to learn from mentors and people around me how to delegate a lot of my responsibilities away. And, at first it was weird. I remember having a conversation with someone and says, list the 10 or 12 things that you have to do all day. And then he says, eliminate 9. And I'm like, eliminate 9? Well, who's going to do those? And he's like, listen, eliminate them and you can give them to someone. He says, focus on the 3 that matter and do those as best as you can. And the rest, if someone else is doing them at 90%, your company's still succeeding. And, those are little tidbits. Again, we could work ourselves to exhaustion or work smarter, not harder.
That's a very, here's the, I have a follow-up on this, because most of the people rarely notice stress while they're in it and then their body starts giving them signal. During this time, Raffi, did stress ever affected your sleep or recovery when you were very much during those moments, during that time period? And when financial success came, did stress decrease or just change form?
I'd be lying to you if I said it didn't. All right. So there were many, many late nights, nights where I had problems sleeping because I couldn't shut my mind off. Mm-hmm. So even, you're away from work, you're done, but you're preoccupied about what's going to happen the next day or the next hour or the next week. So yeah, you consume yourselves with that. And again, finding the balance somewhere in that. Yeah, it took years of training. Now, we talk about work one thing, talking about scaling work another. But once you start throwing in family and responsibility, and with success comes responsibility, because as you grow your team around you, and those people technically depend on you. Their success is based on your leadership. So absolutely. I mean, there were sleepless nights. I'd have a lot of anxiety. And really when it all started kicking in was not so much work. Work I could handle. It's when I started having a family. And when you start worrying about just more than myself or my spouse, it was about a kid. And then, later on in life comes, your aging parents. So you're worried about them. You're worried about your life. You're worried about children. So absolutely, stress has played a big role in all of this. But, I have a saying, and, I say this at the gym to you sometimes, Adam. It's like, get comfortable feeling uncomfortable. Because, when we step out into the real world, Problems are there every day waiting for us. It's the mindset is what we can control. The approach is what we can control. We can't control the problems that are going to arise daily. The only thing we can control is how we react to them. And Adam, what was the part 2 to your question?
I was asking, when financial success came, did stress decrease, or did it just change form?
So, financial success is tricky too, because achieving financial success is one thing that takes plenty of work to get there. Maintaining it is a whole nother level. So now that you're there, obviously you have competition. And sometimes, I remember being challenged by team, people who think they know more than you. But I was very open to it. I took an open approach and said, hey, if you have a better way of how I'm doing things, and let's throw it in the basket and let's talk about it. We can definitely implement it. So, yes. Maintaining success is probably actually more difficult than becoming successful, Adam. Because, you can get to that success level. And I've seen this. I've seen people grow businesses, grow families. And sometimes it gets to their head to where, they start making the wrong decisions, or their focus is not as sharp, and, things slowly start to slip away. I mean, I've seen it happen over and over. So you have to be sharp as a thumbtack to, keep maintaining it. And, it's ever evolving. It's, what worked last week might not work next week. So you have to constantly be creative and stay ahead of it, and, more proactive than reactive.
During those younger years, did you ask yourself, when is enough?
So what is enough, or when is enough?
When is enough?
Well,
what is enough, actually? What is enough?
Well, what is enough is, again, I never put a limit on, income or success, because, if you cap it, then you tell yourself you're going to reach a level, and then you're good there. You're going to hit the cruise control button. It's not how type A or hard driven people operate. We keep pushing. And if there's levels to level up, then we keep going there. Now, when is enough? I have a whole different theory on that. I see people now, retiring at 55, 60 at a younger age. And, I hate to say it, they're withering away. A mind is something that it's a muscle. It needs to be used daily. It needs to be active. It needs to be engaged. So if you retire and slow down and want to water your plants and watch Oprah and Maury Povich, then you start deteriorating, because you're not using your mind. Now you're just absorbing things and reacting to them. So when is enough for me, Adam? I don't have retirement in my sight. I tell this story all the time. I lost my father at the age of 82. And I remember, at 80, I had a talk with him, and, he was sick and bedridden and still working. I said, Dad, when's enough? He says, there is no time frame. I'm going to work till the day I pass. And that's literally what he did. And I see that in me, that I probably would give the same answer if my kids asked me that today. So when is a question mark? I'm just going to keep going till, I guess, the time is there.
Cass and Ally, we typically work with we work we work with a lot of people in the 55 and up. What are those, when you're seeing signs of stress load is too high? What are those things that you typically see, especially that's related to overload and that relates to stress and things that they can't handle? What are those things, and how do we typically what are the things that they typically do to handle it?
I think the first thing that comes to my mind is people don't sleep well. Kind of like Raffi said, you're going to lose sleep, or your thoughts keep going. And then the next thing I thought about is that you have poor nutrition, that you'll just eat what's convenient, or eat or not eat, not hydrate yourself, and tend to lose focus on your own needs because you're meeting the needs of your work or other people. So those are the first two things that came to my mind. I'm curious what Cass has to say.
Those are the two things that I have been struggling with. I've struggled with over the last couple of months, Allie.
I wasn't trying to call you out.
No, I know, but I think those are the pieces that are the easiest to kind of let go and figure out, just, okay, well, this week's going to be a really busy week, so it's okay. I'll catch up next week, and then it just ends up being like a routine. I agree. I think sleep is. I also look at people just not taking time for themselves and having maybe healthier or holistic way of de-stressing or unplugging, and maybe to shut off the mind rather than doing something meditative. It's let me have a glass of wine or a couple glasses of wine to like shut my brain off. I'm not saying specifically me myself, but I think that that's also another way that people might tend to manage through stress. And then just the movement, not exercising, because again, I'm so busy, I'm up and I'm moving around so much that's okay. Like I'm moving all day, I'm not just sitting down, so that's justifying my exercise and movement.
I'm curious here. Let's do some confession here. What are the things that you do and that really keeps your stress levels low, or ways that you typically decompress?
Adam, I can go ahead and start with that. I mean, you guys touched on this. I'm in my latter stage in life. I see that I go to bed earlier. I mean, I'm in bed at 8:30, 9 p.m. sometimes, but I'm also up at 4:30 sometimes. Some of the things that I do now is, when I wake up, it usually takes me 15 minutes to get dressed and get out. I'll be at the gym by, 5:45, 5. But I have certain rules. When I wake up, I don't scroll. I don't check email. I will not respond to a text. I make sure that first 2 hours of the day is my time. I own it. I practically go airplane mode. I have earphones in and I tune the rest of the world out. I smile. I nod to everyone at the gym, but that morning, by getting out whatever I had from the night before and being able to release. I mean, they talk about positive endorphins, right? If you can get those released early in the morning, you won the battle, because those can help carry you through the afternoon, the evening sometimes, or through the day. And, we all get consumed with, problems, and we're all classic overthinkers. How many times have you woke up at night and, fixated on something and you're like, it doesn't even matter, but you fixate on it and then you try to go back to sleep, but it's hard because it's silly. So I think we're our own worst enemy in certain times, but linking, working out and sleeping better, diet, Allyson, like you said, is really, really important. Fuel is not only fuel for the body, it's fuel for the mind. It's like, if you put 87 gasoline in your car, it might sputter in a year. But if you eat, high protein, good fats, nutritious food, fruits, cut out the sugars and processed stuff. And in time, when you keep doing this over and over, it's like a building block. You stack it up and, it starts making you feel better. I mean, for myself at the age of 51, I feel phenomenal these days. I feel energetic. I don't feel really lethargic. My mind is clear, and even tackling problems just seem more of, I'm more nonchalant about it. In my own head, I say, hey, the bigger the problem, the better the solution, the more the profit, and the more rewarding it is. So, if you do the sleep, the eating, the exercise, and that way of thinking, it kind of simplifies life to normalcy.
That's extremely beautiful, and what a great advice about taking control of your first 2 hours of your waking time, which is, I think, a good amount of people get sucked into their phones immediately. And this is the problem of today's world, where you look at the first thing a lot of people do, look at their phone, check emails, sometimes social media. But what happens there, you get sucked in. Ask Ali, what's your answer to this?
So your question was, what helps to keep the stress low, right?
Yeah.
I think this has changed over time for me. I want to say working out would help me keep stress low, but that's my pillar that I'm working on. I know that when I work out, my stress gets lower, but I'm not consistent on that. So I think on a day-to-day, learning how to manage the things that are coming at me, the questions, the concerns, the issues, learning how to process that better and not letting it affect me so much. I think that just come with time, learning how to manage that and knowing who I can talk to work something through. Often I'll talk to Adam or Kaz about something just to work through the issue. And that really helps me, having, those people that you can connect with. And I think for me, it's important to be able to turn off my brain at a certain point, kind of juggling different things. I need to have a couple of hours to decompress myself from one thing and then move on to the next in, the kind of setup that I have in my current routine. But I know that helps me to manage the stress right now. And of course, taking my dog for a walk, just getting outside helps a lot.
Kaz.
Remember that this year my goal was to liberate myself from all the different stresses that I experienced last year. So I've been doing so much better with that. It's still a work in progress, but with what Raffi was sharing, what you were sharing, Raffi, about starting your day early in the morning, I know that majority of the days that I do that, wake up early, kind of ground myself, not really checking my phone. Really, I don't check my phone as often as I used to, which I love. But starting early, that really helps kind of set the tone for the day. And I know on the days where maybe I do occasionally sleep in, I just feel off balance. So that plays a huge role in just how the daily life goes and stress. And then once a week, I still have do like a at-home kind of self-care day, which I look forward to doing. And usually that's like in the evening. And then I know that when I do start to feel a little elevated or stress, I will FaceTime my sister and talk with my nephews and just kind of joke around with them. It's, I used to just go over there, but now that we're a couple hours away from each other, that has helped a lot through the years, just having them to, just kind of really take your mind off of everything else. And recently, within the last 2 weeks, I've been going to recovery yoga class in the evenings, which is also, I've already seen kind of just like the benefits of that too. So I feel like with the stress piece, I'm navigating quite better than what I used to. And of course, there was a life change that occurred recently to allow for more of this, less stress.
What's the life change?
Well, life change, transitioning away from a traveling full-time role to, being stationary in one area. Traveling can be fun, but that also was, I think, adding to just stress and not realizing it.
This is why every time I get to talk to you, you look very different every morning. You're like, even my wife said, Kassandra is like blooming lately.
How about you, Adam? How do you keep your stress low?
I think Raffi knows this a lot, and he has something to do with it. I typically have the ability to put my workout is huge for me. I have to admit something though. Having a son lately has been the most challenging like this life change has been the most challenging piece of balancing it back. And I think, however, there's something that it hasn't really affected my what do you call this, balance, which I think I associate that to just being centered about what's important and knowing, kind of like what Raffi was saying earlier, about handling your stress. It's all in the mind. And there's a lot of times where I look at things that I know that this is going to be temporary, and some of this is going to be out of my control right now, and I'm going to have to handle it later on. And sometimes it's just timing. And so knowing that you're methodically managing things, like, okay, I know I cannot work out this week because I'm adjusting on something. Knowing that I have a backup plan to handle that, I don't stress out about it. So, but the workout is the physical movement, the workout. I rely on it so much that during the weekend, this is where the best part of it. On the weekends, and I've mentioned this so many times on the podcast, on the weekends, there's a part of it where Raffi and I work out together on the weekends, and that's the best stress release that I get personally. When you get this, you almost climb a mountaintop. That's how I imagine this. Every weekend I climb a mountaintop, like Saturday, Sunday, you have to climb a mountaintop, and it primes you for your week, because you almost feel like you cannot have another physically challenging thing, that it prepares you to enter the week and say, okay, I was beat up on the weekend on this workout. So you come in the week, like nothing else can stress you out anymore. So because you're completely primed for handling anything. And so it's the best stress releaser that I have. And then the other piece that I always do, I think I talked about this too, is, and there's a lot of studies, sauna is, going to the steam room is huge benefit, which is another thing, and that all goes back to the gym. So I think those are the pieces. And then of course therapy, that doesn't, if you need to have channels, and I'm a huge advocate for channels of making sure that you're not afraid of handling your stress through those type of things, and this is for all ages, all in different genders. So having support, you can manage stress really well.
I'm noticing that there's just like an inner weavable theme, like for all of us, and something that we're not really hitting on or defining is just like the connection with other people too. Mm-hmm. Is a stress reliever, and we've all adopted that in some kind of form or way within what we were all just sharing.
Sandra, to your point, human interaction is very, very important. I mean, it's stimulation for the brain. Sometimes you have, conversations, or just a good morning or something. I do it at work. Every morning I walk in, I say good morning to all my employees. It's a thing. Or I give them a fist bump, and that's just that's a thing of it's almost like a thing of saying I'm here for you, and I know you guys are here for me. Which I guess it's very, very important. But just to hone in on stress a little bit more. I mean, look, everyone's got it. The most important thing is how do we deal with it? The coping mechanism to it all. And Adam, you mentioned this. When I had one child, it was stressful. I had two children. I thought it was going to be impossible. And, it really, really got tough. I started losing my sleep. I started, losing my gym time. I felt like my life was slipping away because I had other priorities that weren't, necessarily mine. They were my children. So you kind of lose focus of it. But, I've reminded you this You know, these are just stages in life, and they pass. It's like, when you have a dog, it's a puppy. You treat your puppy like it's a newborn, and then eventually in time they learn to adapt to you, and your system and all, and they grow with you. It's the same thing with children. Life is ever adapting, but I think one of the most important thing is when I talk to people is, oh, I'm so busy, I don't have the time. Listen, if we don't make time for our health, our wellness, and our frame of mind, then who's going to do it for us? We can make excuses about it forever. Oh, I'm busy, or not this weekend, or I'll do it later. But to me, that's procrastination. I can't. I can't. I have a rule, and I tell people my rule. Usually I pack to go to the gym the night before, because I shower at the gym and then I go to work from there. In the last 20 years of my life, I've never woke up in the morning when I'm packed. I don't care if I slept bad, or if I started sneezing, or I got a cold, or I felt bad. I will not make an excuse that morning and say, today I can't go because if I do that, I let myself down. So I hold myself to a higher standard. And yes, it could be stressful, but I've always told myself, if I feel bad walking into the gym, I always feel better walking out. So, I march forward and I do it. And sometimes I'm a little laggish, but I still get it done.
You're putting a system around you. That's what you've done too. Raf, you revealed your age earlier, and I wasn't going to reveal something early. I wasn't going to reveal it, but you revealed your age earlier. And most of the time, a lot of people redefine success after 50. Not because they lost ambitions or because they gained perspective, but I'm curious for you, when did you, like, I think there's a lot of evolution that changed during a certain time, but when did that evolution took place? When did your definition of success start evolving? And then what boundary changes everything for you? Because as I'm listening to your perspective, you've really established boundaries that really protects health. I'm curious, when did that change?
It's a good point. I think in my 40s is, after 20 years of work, and, my kids getting a little bit older in life, some of the chaos kind of slowing down or tapering off. My focus changed, my vision changed. And, I mentioned my father earlier. My father was a diabetic. He would get 3 hours of dialysis every other day, and this was for the last 12 years of his life. And I would look at him and I'd tell myself, God, I don't want to be in that situation, so what measures do I need to take now? And that's when things like maintaining my stress levels, or very important for me to exercise, to eat right. Those became more of a primary focus than just the monetary success at work. And that's when kind of the work life, early on I said work life balance didn't exist, but as time went by, as I found more inner peace with myself, I was able to find more of that work life balance. So now at the age of 51, again, I feel phenomenal. I got on the scale this morning, and I haven't weighed what I weighed since high school. And to me, I'm like, hey, that's great. Now I got to eat more because I want to put some of it back. I've lost too much of it too fast. So that's it. Now with success, Adam, like I said earlier, once it comes and maintaining it, now I don't put too much emphasis on the success part, because I've worked for the last 30 years of my life. I've established myself. And now I look at work as more of, hey, I'm going to go somewhere and I'm going to have fun with it. Okay. And when I take that approach, it just makes it easier. And you asked about, what changed. I used to bring problems and work home with me, but somewhere along the way, through the transition of maturing and understanding the little life a little bit more, I would tell myself it's just a problem at work. Leave it there. When I get back there tomorrow, it'll be waiting for me, and I can pick up there. So what I learned to do was, once I got home, to be present for the things that were important to me, which was family, wife, being a good son, checking in on my parents that have always been there for me. And, I get joy out of giving other people joy. I'm a giver. So I give. And, I always feel God gives back. So, with that positive attitude and just that mindset, it just makes things easier.
What do you think? I'm thinking about this. You have a reference here. If someone copied your exact work habit from when you were 40, do you think they would age well the same way you're aging?
I think my answer to that would be yes, Adam, because it's a proven formula because, I'm living it now.
Yeah.
I'm literally living it. I'm eating clean. I'm sleeping better. Sleep is really, really important to me. I tell my son now, like, staying up late was cool when I was young. Now getting to bed early is cool now that I'm older. So the whole thing has flip flopped on me, but I'm enjoying it. So it doesn't matter. But yeah, I absolutely think so. Mindset is very, very important in life. And, being pessimistic will get you nowhere. We can all complain about, the bad weather, or I got a flat tire today, or something didn't go right, or so-and-so said something about me. But you know what? Those are all superficial things that can be fixed, and they're not that big. It's how you react to them is what's really going to help you get through this. So, I truly believe it, Adam. If someone followed a formula of sleeping right and eating right and exercising, life just becomes easier. And I'm telling you this just from my personal experience.
And just one more file about that. What recovery habit matters the most after 50 that people underestimate, you think?
I think being present in life after 50 is probably the most important thing. If you've achieved success and you're trying to maintain it and you got a family around you, being present in the moment. The greatest joy for me sometimes is just having a 20-minute conversation with my mom. It may not seem like such a big deal, but, I get joy out of it. She loves hearing from me. Coming home or asking my kids how their day was. It's more important to get a reaction from them and them opening up to me. So, we're so sometimes consumed with what's going to happen in the future, or so consumed with what's happened in the past, that we forget that we're living in the present, and we're not sometimes fully engaged. So being engaged and present in the moment after 50 is, I think, it's crucial. And it all ties back into, again, sleeping right, eating right, exercising right, and it all comes to a head.
Allyson, I know there's a lot of activities happening around PrimeSpan and a lot of the things that we're doing. Do you mind sharing to our listeners, audience, what's going on in the PrimeSpan world, and what are the other things that people should be looking forward to when it comes to what we're doing?
Yes, thank you. So currently we're looking at our Facebook group. So we really want people to join in on our community there. Upcoming, we have some free live workshops we're going to be hosting. Our next one will be on March 21st. So join our Facebook group and you can stay up to date on what we're doing at PrimeSpan. And if you're interested to take that further, we have our courses and our coaching that you could sign up. Our coaches are just about to graduate, which is really exciting for their certification. And so they're ready and looking to help people use our program and help to support them with more guidance and support. So that's one way to stay engaged with us. We want you to follow us on all of our social media platforms at primespan.life. And let's see, we also want you to listen to our podcast. We have our podcast available on all streaming platforms: Spotify, Apple, YouTube, Substack. So there's a lot of ways to stay engaged with us at PrimeSpan and hear more with our upcoming workshops. So looking forward to have you.
You know, as we're getting closer to an end here, and Raffi, I have one last question. If you could give your 40-year-old self one rule about work and health, what would it be?
You know what, work, I would probably say, don't take it so serious. And what I mean by that is don't be nonchalant about it, but you know what? Don't take it personal. Work is work. When we go to work, there's always problems that are going to arise. And, you know, our job is to cut through them, fix them, or move on from them. Life, I would say the importance is, you know, take care of your health. That is really, really important these days. I see people having strokes, heart attacks, cardiovascular disease at younger and younger ages. I don't know if it's from the food we eat or the stress that we're taking or even from our ozone layer. I don't have the proper answer to that. Take it serious. That's longevity is important. Living a good, healthy life. You know, they say, you know, for working out, you know, if your legs are strong, your heart is strong, therefore it'll give you a strong mind also. Take your health serious, and with health comes wealth, is what I got to say.
I think this is a good way to say this is part one of many more conversation on our podcast. Raffi, we appreciate your time on this topic. You brought a lot of insights. Thank you for your time. Thank you for what you do for a lot of the things that you shared here. Cass, Ally, do you have anything before we go?
I love the ending to what Raffi said, just health is wealth. It's just so simple. We even touched on this last week. Like, why are we working so hard, not taking care of ourselves during these, you know, hardworking years? And then when it's time to enjoy it, we're now battling different illnesses and, you know, our body's breaking down. So health is wealth, everybody.
Thank you, Kassandra. Thank you, Allyson. Thank you again, everybody, for joining in today's episode. Raffi, thank you for being here as a guest podcaster. We hope that you could join us for another episode. Again, this is just one of the many podcasts that hope we could record with you until our next recording. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you for spending time with us. If today's conversation gave you clarity or steadiness, take that with you. We release new episodes weekly. Follow the PrimeSpan Podcast on Apple Podcasts so you don't miss what's next. Until next time, take care of yourself and keep living well.